So we're going to start our journey into college algebra with section 1.2. We don't cover section 1.1. It's on linear equations, and you've been solving linear equations since probably 8th grade. You don't need to see those again. But we will start with quadratic equations. They're important because we'll need all this material in future sections. So we're going to start with quadratic equations and how to solve them. This is section 1.2, part 1. Just to remind you, a quadratic equation has the form ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. The lead coefficient a can't be 0 because if this were a 0, this would not be a quadratic equation. What makes this a quadratic equation is that x squared. So that x squared is why we're gluing in on this and calling it a quadratic equation. They're also known as second degree equations because of that too. So all that kind of ties together. There are lots of different methods we can use to solve these. It's important that you understand what's the most efficient method to use and always use that method, because otherwise you're going to run out of time on things. And your boss is always going to want you to use the most efficient method to get to the answer. So we're going to go through several different methods. The first method we're going to talk about is factoring. So let's come in and solve some using factoring. Our first example, this is example 1, part A, is let's solve the equation x squared minus 8x is equal to 0. We're going to do this by factoring. So we're going to notice if we just have two terms, they do have something in common. Always look for the greatest common factor first. So I'm going to pull an x out. That's the factoring. That'll leave me with x minus 8 equal to 0. We're now going to use the zero product property, which simply says that if you have a product equal to 0, then each factor could be equal to 0. So we're going to set each of our factors. That would be the x, and the x minus 8 equal to 0. So right away, we know that x is either 0, or from this one, we get an x equal to 8. So we get two solutions, and that's because it's a quadratic, and it's also because it's a second degree equation. So that x comes up there is predicting the number of answers. So our two solutions are 0 and 8. So the advantage of factoring is it's fast, it's quick, it's fast, it's the most efficient method. The problem is it's not always going to work. So there are places where we're not going to be able to factor, but it is always the quickest way to get to an answer. So that was example A. Let's take a look at example B. Also by factoring, this one says x squared is equal to x plus 6. Well, the first thing you're going to notice is that it's not in standard form. Standard form means that everything is on the left side in descending order and it's equal to 0. So the first thing we're going to do is move everything to the left side. So that'll give us x squared. We're going to bring over the x and make it a negative. We'll bring over the 6, also making it a negative. And now it's in standard form. X squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0. This time we have three terms, so we're going to factor this as a trinomial. What I'm going to look for are factors of 6 that subtract to 1. Well, factors of 6 that subtract to 1 are 3 and 2. So we're going to have an x with a 3 and an x with a 2 equal to 0. The larger factor is going to take that first sign, which is a minus. The second factor has to take the opposite sign because you're subtracting. So again, if anything I just said does not make sense to you, that means that you're really rusty on this. You need to backtrack, go to YouTube, go to Khan Academy specifically, and look for factoring trinomials and get some practice on this. We do not have a day to spend on this. So we're going to assume that you can do this automatically. Setting each factor to 0, that's x minus 3 equal to 0. That's going to give me x equal to 3. I'll set x plus 2 equal to 0, and I'll get x equal to negative 2. So my two solutions this time are negative 2 and a positive 3. You'll notice that I'm putting them in solution set notation. That's what the little curly brackets are telling us that it's a set of answers, that the answers are negative through 2 and 3. A couple more in the factoring, just to give you a little bit more practice at this. Example C, on example 1, says 2x squared is equal to x plus 3. So same issue, it's not in standard form. Our first step is to move everything over. So that'll give me 2x squared minus x minus 3 is equal to 0. This is an let's try this again. It's a trinomial factoring. The difference is that there's a leading coefficient of 2, not a 1. So I can't just look at the 3 to find my factors. I actually have to take the 2 times the 3, getting the 6 again, looking for factors of 6 that subtract to 1 are still 2 and 3. But this time I'm going to arrange them so the 2x and the 3 are in the same factor, and the 1 is in the second factor. When I check this, This will give me a 2x, this will give me a 3x, and when I subtract them, I'll get that. I need a negative on the 3 to give me the negative 3x, and a positive on the 1. So that's going to give us 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. So 2x will be equal to 3, and x is equal to 3 halves. X plus 1 is equal to 0, so x is equal to negative 1. Sorry about that. Let me silence that. Okay, so we end up with two answers again, negative 1 and positive 3 halves. I didn't comment, but please note that you can check these by plugging the answers back in one at a time, not both at the same time. Plugging that negative 1 in, you should get negative 1 squared is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. And negative 1 plus 3 is 2. So 2 equals 2. So it definitely works. And those are our two solutions. Again, if you're struggling on how I got from here to here, you need to make sure you get some extra practice in. You can find factoring in the first, there's a review chapter on a textbook. You can look in there. Or like I said, go to the Khan Academy on YouTube and look for factoring trinomials, and it'll give you some background on it. One more. Part D says 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 is equal to 0. So I take 9 times 1, which is 9. Factors of 9 that are going to add this time, because there's a plus there, to 6 are 3 and 3. So I'm going to break this into a 3x and a 3x. Factors of 1 are 1 and 1. So you'll notice that these two multiply to give me the 9. These two are multiplying to give me the 1. Same thing over here. The 2 and the 1 are multiplying to give me the 2. The 3 and the 1 are multiplying to give me the 3. So this time, because we're adding, they're both going to take the first sign, so it's a minus and a minus. There it is. What we're going to notice this time is that the factors themselves are identical. It's a repeated factor. So I really only need to set it equal to 0 one time. Solving it was going to give me x equal to 1/3. So instead of having two different solutions like we did in the previous examples, we get one repeated solution. So it's a 1/3 and a 1/3, but you don't need to list it twice. So this is just to know real solution. And that's how we solve quadratic equations, by factoring. Again, it works, it's fast, it should be efficient. The difficulty is that it's not always going to work. There are going to be some problems where it doesn't solve, where it's not factorable. So we'll need alternative